Thankfully, we now have Dr. Sam Amadi in the house. If Dr. Sam Amadi is ready to make his presentation, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I came late. I had to go. Can I go ahead? Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, as a teacher now, I had to go to faculty to rectify students' exam at the schools. I just came in late to join. So pardon me, I don't know exactly who has spoken. But is there any particular direction you want me to take, or I should just go on generally? I listened to Mahmoud, some part of Mahmoud's presentation.
Yeah,
is there any particular area?
Yeah, I'm sure we sent you a topic, sir. The topic.
I know. Okay, I just want to know that whether I want me to follow with that topic or.
Yes, please. Yes, that topic, please. We want you to follow that.
Okay, because I want to make sure. Okay, no problem. First, let me apologize for not being able to be here on time, as I already indicated. We're looking at the issue of coronavirus pandemic and good governance, and also restructuring and 1999 constitution. Let me start straight by where Mahmoud stopped as regards the Constitutional Conference 2014. I'm sure Prof will say more about that. But the Constitutional Conference is not an isolated incident, meaning that the question around the national question. I was a young person, as a young guy with Ghana for me, when Akaba tried to carry out the first Constitutional Conference in Lagos then, and so many civil societies. I was active there. And the question of national question, even as Mahmoud was my president when we announced, when we had our academic reform program and the emergency of education, the national question has also been what we had been kind of concerned about as the way to take that forward. Now, let me say that Nigeria, the problem with Nigeria, 3 fundamental crises are identified in a paper I did at the Kaduna State University. I call it the 3 fundamental crises. One is what I call the nationality crisis or citizenship crisis. The idea is that, like Professor Benedict argued, says a state is an imaginary social imagination. We create, there are no perfect nations. So a nation is constituted through what they call social imagination. So you create a state. But what is clear is that all successful states have had some common features. First is the idea of a modern concept of citizenship. If you look at our constitution, that's my first quarter. Our constitution creates the concept of citizenship around the concept of those who are indigenous to Nigeria. Maybe it was pragmatic to talk about ethnic groups indigenous to Nigeria, but it has fostered, in my view, a concept of citizenship that is ethnicized. Across West Africa and Africa, we've seen the issue around nationality, citizenship, and indigeneship being a crisis. So the Constitution, in my view, fails to construct a national civic citizenship, a citizenship defined by legal ties towards territory, whether by assimilation, whether by naturalization, or other forms. Again, in 1959, Nigeria prior to independence, there's been this big debate. I'm happy Dr. Yadudu is here today, Professor Yadudu. The debate around religion and state is critical in Nigeria. I took the view, and I've written several journal articles on that, that the Nigeria original sin was to create, instead of a modern secular, I'm going to come back to that word, it's very problematic, but modern secular state, democratic secular state, we created by default or by design a new feudal theocratic state or religious state. Now there's a debate around what does Section 10 say. Some scholars have argued that Section 10 does not make Nigeria a secular state. And they see secularity in the context of maybe godless, anti-religious state. But my view has been that Section 10 caused a disruption and therefore creates a new Nigerian state around the concept of religious neutrality. So the Nigerian problem has been a problem of how do we manage religious plurality and diversity. And for me, the effort to manage it through what I call accommodation approach, equality. So Christian Muslims, you provide for Christian Muslims, who has failed and will fail. Whether it's in terms of curriculum, fight over which religion is more privileged. So a Nigerian state has a problem of first defining who is a Nigerian, citizenship, civic rights. Two, how will Nigeria deal with the incommensurable fact of diversity, religious, metaphysical, philosophical. Today, we saw a Nigerian atheist who was arrested somewhere in Kaduna and taken to Kano for blaspheming, allegedly, the Holy Prophet. So if you look at Nigerian legal history, you see the oddities of how religion and politics and religion has mixed in a way that has threatened both national unity, stability, and development. I was a lawyer who took Zamfara state government to court in 2000 before I traveled abroad for studies. And I sued on behalf of Laws, Human Rights Law Services. I was at Zamfara High Court, our case was struck out because they said we are Lagosians, human rights activists, were neither Muslims nor Zamfarians. We brought a case in the name of Emma Shehuden, who is a native Zamfaran Christian, went to High Court, went to Court of Appeal before I left. So we're the first people to challenge in 2000 the concept of a Nigerian state assembly making a criminal public law in the name of religion. The democratic argument is that every assembly has the right to make laws. So if they are dominated more by a particular philosophical or religious sect, they can make law. But the argument to make is that's the argument dating to liberal scholars like John Ross and others. And one basis is one who got it very well. That once you make law, religious law, you are giving force of state to enforce a concept of the good that is particular to a particular religion. So the 10 or 12 northern states that enacted the Sharia criminal code arguably have disrupted the secular democratic character of the Nigerian state, or at least created a conflict and confusion as to whether those states are in themselves Muslim states within the Nigerian state. And my view is that a modern democratic state should have one linkage between citizen and law. I'm not against legal pluralism, but it seems to me that some confusion when the same state can have multiple legal relationships. So that's the second crisis of the Nigerian state. The crisis, the first one was a crisis of citizenship. Who's a Nigerian? Are we going to create a Nigerian based on civic connection to the state, and therefore with a whole bundle of rights that everybody share as a civic person, and therefore define their ownership not based on appeal to ethnic or religious elements or incidents, but to civic only legal civic rights, what we call democratic citizenship. Second, I said religion and state. Are you going to create a Nigeria that is modern secular democratic, or that is neo-feudal theocratic, in which case religious accommodation and struggle for religion becomes the order. Struggle between religion for order, for supremacy becomes the order. So the third crisis, and they're all linked together, for me, the constitution, is the crisis of what I call the productivity crisis. Now, the productivity crisis is a crisis that says, look, Nigerian state focuses on promoting prerogatives and privileges. Some scholars have talked about prebendalism, neo-patrimonial state, which is a state that is in the process of dispensing privileges. Prebend in the days of the Catholic Empire, Roman Empire, and the power of the ecclesiastics to dispense privileges called prebend. Now, what does that mean practically? It means that the design of our political economy is not based on production, but rather on consumption and sharing. You can call it rentier state. So the Constitution of Nigeria provides some kind of justification for a state that focuses more on privilege given to people based on privilege. So oil blocks are shared, which is a modern economic oddity, that a country will award oil blocks to persons not necessarily as a form of private-public partnership based on proposals and bids that are evaluated based on competence or other objective criteria, but based on some connection, network, whether to the president. The Nigerian richest and African richest woman is richest because she has an opportunistic net connection to the Nigerian president. Today, projects are not cited or developed based on cost-benefit analysis. The power sector has crisis today because we insisted on putting power plants not where we have gas and therefore economize on cost, but put it in places where the port is determined. So primarily that's a productivity crisis, and it affects livelihood, it affects our production, it affects this conflict that the nationality question, religious question, the productivity crisis reinforces those crises. Now, so look at the Nigerian constitution, therefore. I'm not a supporter of continuous revision of constitutions. In fact, the theory from political scientists is that the most stable constitutions and the most stable politics are those constitutions that have not been altered. Because when you amend constitution too frequently, they create a self-fulfilling prophecy, a subject of political contestation. Anybody who loses in the electoral process takes the constitution. When you win, you change the constitution. Then the constitution becomes a political pie to fight for the next election. So when you win again, you change. So oftentimes, if you look at countries all over the world that are doing a lot of constitutional amendments, they are unstable. If you look at enduring democracies, they have had old constitutions. So all these constitutional amendments are not good. But I subscribe to changing the fundamentals of constitution either through a national conference or some kind of way that we go back to do what I call, let's first reconceptualize the Nigerian state. Today, the Daily Telegraph summed up today, the Telegraph of London, about Buhari's 5 years. It says Nigeria is nearing state failure. Every indicator of failure is there, whether in terms of terrorism, in terms of violence, banditry, in terms of criminality, kidnapping, lawlessness, several ungoverned territories. But they are built around a constitutional dissonance. And that constitutional dissonance is not basically about devolution, about exclusive and concurrent. Those things can be suboptimal. The real crisis of the Nigerian constitutional state is a crisis of identification. In strategy, we call it IDEM. What's Nigeria for? Who is a Nigerian? How do you define Nigerians' relationship to themselves? The feudal, I call it neo-feudal, the feudal elements that Nigeria is still run as if is an agglomeration of ethnic religious interests, not as a transformed entity that represents before law and public policy as one civic space. If we don't create a Nigeria with a one civic space, which is defined by first, democratic citizenship, the right of every Nigerian to be a citizen of Nigeria everywhere, satisfying basic legal requirements. Two, the right of every Nigerian, the socioeconomic rights, meaning citizenship has an economic component, meaning that resources should go to address the needs of citizens. So the clamor to have Section Chapter 2, made enforceable, flows from democratic citizenship. The third issue is that Nigeria will develop a way to manage religion, which will make it private, free. Everybody can right to freedom of religion, but private. The state will pull away from supporting and getting involved in religious activity of any dimension. I'm not talking about Nigeria is being Islamized or Christianized. The Nigerian state should opt out of religion and allow religion to be a marketplace activity. Call it equality, or let's call it neutrality, because when we say a secular state, it connotes the idea of a godless or anti-religion state. Neutral, but not bothered about people, as long as it set publicly acceptable rules, people can go and worship their God in their own way. That will free these ethno-religious conflicts, squabble, competition to control the Nigerian state, because there is merit, there is value, there is incentive to control the state, to use it to advance ethnic or religious agenda. And the last I talked about is the productivity. That will involve what I call restructuring. I like to follow the European notion of subsidiarity, which is that problems should be solved at the lowest level, and therefore resources should go to the lowest level. So if people are dealing with erosion, it should be solved by the local government or county council or state. So for me, devolution or restructuring is to create a functional state based on democratizing local sphere of governance. So give back to local government. When I was going to run for governor, I said I was going to give 100% of local allocation to local governments. And we're going to set up a expanded ESCO, elected town unions, going back to community democracy. So it's not about, I'm not in support of ethnic state federalism, meaning you carve out this for the Hausa Fulanis, or Hausa or Fulani or BBO or Ijo or Igbo. No, I am in support of devolving power, restructuring, so that local people, however defined, Kano will deal with Kano issues with resources that Kano can create. Therefore, we can unleash the dynamics, the energy of Nigerian people. Even when we had our regional government, it made a lot of sense because we were regions and then became nation. Now, every region was very economically productive. Arthur Lewis, who got Nobel in 1964, so argued in his book, he argued thoroughly against the centralization. Says, let's go back to federalism where regions can deal with regional problems. So I think that regionalization is what I want to have, but more important could be a system where we restructure and give back power, resources to the lowest unit, not to the people. So my view on restructuring is that I'm not hung up on whether it's regional or ethnically based, but all I want is a system that allows local problems to be solved at a local level and allows resources to flow so that incentive will be in production rather than sharing, so that even states, individuals should own the oil themselves, the land, and they should pay royalties. We don't have to say, oh, we're going to give all the oil to Niger Delta, and then the north or the east will lose. No, it's a question of going back to create incentive for production and giving people a sense of ownership. Finally, for me, the issue around restructuring in Nigeria is being seen as issue of competitive politics again. So people perhaps think that, oh, if we restructure, a particular zone will be much more prosperous, advantage than others. So those who have the votes, the human power, the majority, try to trump that move. And so if you go to National Assembly today, likely it will fail. And so if you go to Constitutional Conference, likely it will succeed because of maybe parity of representation, or maybe the other groups have more bargaining power. And so people are kind of trumping each other on political terrain because we have defined it in loser-winner time. But if we design it in a configured Nigeria, not around ethnic identity, a modern state. You see, let me end with this. In 1958, the real question was, before Wuliki's commission, should we deal with the minority question in Nigeria through two processes? One, a confederal system, ethnic identity, where each group goes have ethnic enclave, identity, or through fundamental human rights. And that commission said the best way is to create a fundamental human right, which will be a counter-majoritarian structure to the ethnic group, as well as representation for minorities, so that you are creating political minorities. So they settled Nigerian question not in carving out ethnic identities and creating a confederal arrangement. They resolve Nigerian crisis on the basis of a bundle of rights that applies to all Nigerians, and then the right of participation for all Nigerian ethnic or religious groups. That still provides the basis for which we can resolve the constitutional crisis. That is, we need to make a choice between a neo-feudal, and I use the word advantage. The feudal system is and we see across Nigeria, bring in play Mahmoud Mamdani's classic book, Citizen and State, where the argument that all across Africa, late colonization, we are, instead of democratizing local area, colonial master centralized dictatorship. And is that is why we are still having communal conflict. Because in the locale, there's no democracy. One ethnic group is imposed above other because we want to see who is the major ethnic group in this area. So either the Igbos dominating the non-Igbo in the southeast, or is the Yorubas dominating, or the Fulani Hausas dominating the non-Fulani Hausas in the north. So my view is that, look, Nigeria has a great prospect. It was a failure of the Nigerian state that tomorrow will be doing Biafra anniversary of the war, the anniversary of the war. It was a failure of Nigeria that created, and it's a failure of Nigeria that's creating the same aspiration for several Biafras. We can decide to create a modern democratic and secular or religiously neutral. Two, totally democratic in the sense that we have no place for any essence of authority that is not derived from democratic mandate. That is the lens in which I look at the Constitution. So these three areas are the areas I would take away. I would take reference to religion in the Constitution out. No religious courts, whether it's Sharia Court of Appeal or Sharia High Court, no religious court, all those courts should operate at the level of personal law as well before. There should be no criminal religious law, because a criminal religious law imports the use of coercive state power to prefer or to support a conception of the good, in this case, religious. That detracts from the sense of democracy. And again, we should free our economy to run on the basis of production. People should earn what they kill, so that, and then you provide for those who have the accident of misfortune, like social democratic states in the Scandinavia. You provide for everybody equality, equal access, equal opportunity, and then you provide for those who will have the misfortune of either accident, misfortune of failure, of poverty, but not a state that is run on privilege, either of class or of ethnic group or religious group. All forms of such classism betrays, creates unproductive economy. And for me, these are the central question of Nigeria. We can be a great nation, united as Nigeria. I am more like a modern Zikist. I want a Nigeria that's defined basically by civic ties to the geopolitics. It doesn't matter other individual identities we carry, but the state sees us just as Nigerian citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amadi, for such a very good